Hey, it's Carolina with alwaysexpectmore.com, and today we're going to make a drawstring pouch that opens and closes and is perfect for keeping all kinds of little treasures, and we're going to learn how to make a simple scrunchie. You ready? Let's get sewing. We're doing project 8, and that's actually two different projects. We're making a drawstring bag and a scrunchie, and they use some similar techniques, so I thought I would go ahead and make both projects as part of one project. Originally, I thought that this really fun otter fabric would be great for my drawstring bag, but because of the way that the drawstring bag is made, it's made where the fabric gets folded up from the bottom, so the otters on this side would be right side up, but the otters on this side of the bag would be right side down. So I decided a directional print was not the best choice for this project. So instead, I'm going to use this scrap of fabric that is just a general pattern, and I think that this will be fun. So I need to cut my fabric into a 6" by 14" piece, and we're going to use our favorite method, which is the piece of paper method. On the back of our fabric, we're going to take our piece of paper and put it on our fabric. We're going to have it a little bit away from our selvage edge. And I'm just going to draw the top edge. I know that this is 8½, so it's way bigger than I need. And this is 11 inches. And I need it 14 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and add 3 more inches to this. There we go. So I've got this 14 inches and I need this 6 inches. The easiest way to do that would be to fold this piece of paper in half. And now I know that this is 4½ inches. And I just add 1½ inches to that. There we go. Now I have my 6 by 14" piece of fabric, and I'm going to cut it out. Okay, so we have our piece of fabric cut, and we're going to bring each of the long sides in 1/8 inch, and then we're going to bring them in 1/4 inch. Now on my measuring tape, I don't have 1/8 inch that you can see, but it's the littlest bit. It's about half of that metal tab. So I'm really just bringing in the smallest bit of this edge. And I'm going to stitch down both of these sides, and I want to stitch close to this fold so that I make sure that I'm not just stitching here and when this opens up you can still see the raw edge of the fabric. I want to stitch here where I'm stitching through 1, 2, 3 layers of fabric here close to the fold. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that on both sides. Now I'm going to fold this down 1/4 inch and then down 1/2 inch. And you can press between each fold, or if you can hold it like that without burning yourself, you can press both at the same time. And these are going to be the casings where our ribbon goes through. And you want to make these as large as possible, so you're going to stitch really, really close to this folded edge here. And this time when we start our stitches, we're going to go back a couple stitches and forward a couple stitches to lock those stitches in place. needle up, press our foot up. We can cut our threads. Now I'm going to stitch the other side, again, really close to that fold. And at the beginning and end, you need to lock those stitches. You can cut any stray threads that you have. There we go. Now we're going to fold it in half, right sides together, and we're going to stitch along both sides, but only up to this casing. So I'm taking this to my machine, and down at the bottom I'm going to do a couple of stitches forward and a couple stitches back to lock everything in place, and then go all the way up. Just up to that casing, and then forward and back. Needle up, press your foot up, and you can cut your threads. Same thing on the other side. So we have our 5/8 inch ribbon. If you have ribbon that's skinnier than this, totally fine, not a big deal at all. So I want 2 feet of this ribbon, and I want it cut into 1 foot lengths. So 12 inches. There we go. I have two 12-inch pieces of this ribbon, and we're going to use this very fancy safety pin. Now I've found that if you fold the end of your ribbon in half before you put your safety pin through, then there's no chance of you ripping. If you just try to catch the edge here, sometimes your safety pin will rip through, and that's a bummer. So we're just going to fold it in half for a little extra security, and then put our safety pin through that folded edge and close the safety pin. And so the safety pin will be an easy thing for us to hold as we put the ribbon through. And you want the ribbon to go in. We're going to take it all the way through one side, and then go into the other side and go all the way through the other side as well. There we go. So now if you want to tie a knot already because you're worried about it coming loose, which is a totally reasonable worry, you can pull this tight so that you've got lots of room to make your knot, and you're going to loop it around your fingers and then come up through. And sometimes the knot can be tricky, so if you want to ask an adult for help on this part, go ahead and do. And you want the knot to come pretty close to your tail ends here. You can just trim your tail ends into a kind of cute little point. And I have some weird fray threads, so I'm going to cut those off. And so you could leave your drawstring bag like this, but I like being able to pull it from both sides and not have to just pull it from one side. I think drawstrings from both sides are cute. So since I already have a drawstring knot on this side, I'm going to repeat my process from the other side. Fold, pin. I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to go in and then all the way around. So if you think that overhand knots are a little bit tricky and you don't have an adult handy, you could actually take this and kind of fold it on itself and then go back and forth and do some stitches right there, and that would create a stop for you. I think a knot looks a little bit nicer, so I'm definitely going to do a knot, but it's up to you. You totally have options. So I'm going to tie my nice tight knot and just cut off the edges at an angle to make them a little prettier. So there we go. So now you can just stick your fingers in to open up your little drawstring bag, and to close it, it's as easy as grabbing both ends and just pulling it shut. And that makes a super cute, simple drawstring bag. So that drawstring bag project was so simple that we're also going to go ahead and make this scrunchie, which is super simple. You can use the same fabric that you did for the drawstring bag, or you can use something else. I love a striped fabric for a scrunchie. Don't know why, I just think it's super cute. So we're going to start by cutting our piece of fabric 3 inches by 12 inches, and I've got it folded in half like this. So 3 inches by 12 inches is going to be really easy. I'm going to go ahead and fold it with the wrong side out, so I can draw on here, and I just need it to be 3 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My 6 is right here because this ruler is 12.5 inches. Now if you want your scrunchie to look, well, scrunchier, then you could use a longer piece of fabric. And if you want your scrunchie to be poofier, you can use a wider piece of fabric. This is just some starting off measurements, but really any size strip of fabric just about, especially if it's bigger than 3 inches by 12 inches, will get you a scrunchie. Now if you use a piece that's as wide as this is, that might be a little too wide. So now we have our scrunchie fabric. We're going to go ahead and fold it in half and stitch from one end all the way to the other. We're using our regular 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And if you want, you can pin this to hold the edges in place. Now we've turned tubes right side out before, just using our fingers. This tube is a little skinny to do that, so I'm going to show you the safety pin way of turning a tube right side out. So right here on the fold, I'm just going to put my safety pin in, and then I'm going to turn it so that my safety pin goes into the casing. And a casing is just basically our loop here. Then I'll pull that safety pin through, and as this bunches up, if I want to pull it back over itself, if it's too bunched up, I totally can, but you don't have to. It depends how big your safety pin is, really. When you get to the other end, that's when you gently start pulling it back over itself. And now you're right side out. So you can fluff this a little bit if you want. It's about to be turned into a scrunchie, so you don't have to worry about ironing it or doing anything fancy there. We're going to go ahead and get our elastic. I'm using 8 inches of elastic, and it's pretty obvious that 8 inches of elastic is going to be shorter than our scrunchie, which is what we want, but you will need to be careful when putting this into your scrunchie that you don't lose the tail end going through. So I'm going to put this on my safety pin, and I'm going to put the elastic through. Now, if you feel like you need to pull this over and you're afraid you're gonna lose your tail in here, what you can actually do is grab a pin and just pin the elastic in place, and that'll keep it from getting sucked in. So there's my safety pin. I can feel it through the fabric. Make sure you don't lose that end of the elastic. There we go. So now I have my two ends of my elastic, and I can get my fabric out of the way. And just like we did with the drawstring bag we just made, I'm going to tie this in a knot. If tying it in a knot is tough for you, you can overlap the edges and just do a bunch of stitches right here to hold it all in place. But if you're going to do that, then I would suggest using like 6 or 7 inches of elastic instead of a full 8 inches of elastic. So now we have our scrunchie, but it's not quite finished yet. You're going to hide the knot so it's out of our way. And we're going to tuck one of these ends inside the other. Doesn't matter which is which. And then we're going to, just like we did the ends of the apron tie, fold in the edges so you don't have any raw edges. That looks pretty good. I've got a loose thread there. I want to cut that away. Now, if you don't really care about your finished scrunchie looking really, really pretty, you can go ahead and just take this underneath your sewing machine and just and sew this closed. And that's totally a way to finish it off. You will absolutely see that line and it won't be as pretty and poofy here. So what I prefer to do is hand sew this closed. So to hand sew this closed, I'm going to start by bringing my thread up right here where the folded edge comes up to the other edge, and I'm gonna hide that tail of thread. It's just gonna get sucked in, and then only grabbing the two fabrics. I'm not going all the way through all the layers. I'm gonna make a stitch, and I'm gonna do 3 stitches in place here. So that was 1. Careful that my thread doesn't wrap around. There we go. That's 2. And then with my 3rd one, I'm going to go through my loop, and that's going to make my knot. So now I'm just going to keep stitching all the way around. Grabbing the fabric on the one side and the fold on the other. And if you want to adjust, you can totally just adjust like this. And with this stripy fabric, this seam is also really hidden. You can't really see it as well. This is another perk of using a stripy fabric, but I just think stripy fabrics just look a little more scrunchy. When you get back to the beginning again, you want to do your 3 stitches in place. Oh, I forgot to tie tie my knot. So I'm going to do a 4th stitch, go through that loop, tie the knot. And now I'm going to take this thread, just put it in, and bring it out somewhere further away so that buries that thread end and I don't have a random thread end just sticking out. So now I can adjust this however I want to make it super scrunchy and fluffy. And there we go. We have our DIY scrunchie. Weren't these projects so simple and easy? Plus, if you make a lot of scrunchies, you can tuck them all in your drawstring pouch. Super handy. I'm so glad you were sewing with me today. I can't wait to share project number 9 with you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me for Summer Sew Camp.